All right, well, folks, this is Terri Hall. I'm the founder and director of both Texas Turf and Texans for Toll-Free Highways. We've been dealing with transportation issues around the state for a very long time, as you all know. And we're seeing a new attack. It used to be just toll roads and some good fiscal policy when it came to this new toll tax that was being imposed on us against our will. But now we're seeing a massive shift away from that toward an all-out war on cars. Anti-car policies are popping up left and right everywhere we go. What we're seeing now is the radical environmental agenda being imposed in transportation, just like it is in healthcare, economic policy, and every other type of policy we see happening in our country right now. What we're trying to do this session as TURF and Texans for Toll-Free Highways is to now expand our horizons to address those issues that we see emerging from the radical environmentalist and woke left. They're literally trying to put in diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG type of constraints on roads and transportation and investing. So all of those things are going to come back and hit us when it comes to roads. And we're trying to be preemptive, if you will, to try and protect Texas from some of the things that we saw actually become law in the federal law known as the Biden infrastructure bill. It's called IIJA for short, Infrastructure and Jobs Act, something like that. But at the end of the day, there's some things in there that we have to do this session to protect Texas, or we will have things like a remote kill switch installed in every vehicle in the state of Texas, and you will not be able to drive a car without the threat of either the manufacturer, the government, or some other third party from being able to disable the use of your vehicle without your permission. So that's really the number one DEFCON 5. We are in, big trouble, as we have got to get protection against the remote kill switch technology being put in all of our cars. The federal bill mandates that it be in all cars after 2026. So if we wait till the 2025 session to do this, that means they're already going to be running these cars off the fleet in 2026, and it's going to be too late for us because we're already seeing some technology going into these cars today, much less in 2025 or 2026. So that's really the major issue that we're having to deal with this session. But we have a whole slate of bills that we want to share with you about how we're going to tackle some of these radical environmental policies as they seep into Texas policy. Basically, they're trying to do everything they can to make you as miserable as possible to drive, to force you out of your car and into some other form of transportation, whether it's mass transit. They're trying to take our road space and give it to bike lanes and bus lanes. We call that sometimes a road diet because, of course, when you diet, you're limiting your intake of something, right? Well, this is basically created road scarcity. They're creating congestion on purpose, intentionally, to try and force you out of your car. It's kind of what we call the pain index or the misery index. If they can increase your pain on driving to such a degree that they can force you to switch modes into walking, biking, or using mass transit, well, then they've won the day because they don't want you in your evil fossil fuel burning car. So that's kind of where we're at, unfortunately. And so we have a slate of bills to take care of that. So we want you to know, hey, there's help on the way, right? So I'm going to start. We actually have an action sheet that we're going to be sharing with you with all of these bills listed. So don't worry about trying to scramble to write down all the bill numbers. I'm just going to run through them for you to let you know what we're doing. So we actually have a bill. Well, let me just take the traditional bills that we have always filed for the last several sessions that continue to be a thorn in our side when it comes to toll policy before we move on to some of the radical environmentalist stuff. Well, one of the first ones is our bill to take tolls off the road when they're paid for. We call it the toll cessation bill, if you will. That was filed by Matt Shaheen in the House. It's House Bill 2325. And this is something that we want you all to know. We could not get a Senate sponsor for this bill. Now, before we start thinking about some of our good guys and trying to tar and feather them, Bob Hall and Mays Middleton are already carrying a whole slate of our bills on the Senate side, so we want to get them off the hook. And we had the help of Senator Lois Cole, of course, in doing one of our bills. But her plate, similar to what happened with Senator Hall, they couldn't carry as many of our bills as normal because their slate is full with so many other fantastic bills that the grassroots need, including the priorities of the Republican Party. So she's filled up with all of our medical freedom bills, all the COVID bills to beat back all the abuses that took place during COVID because she's the health committee chair. So we're kind of letting her off the hook for that. But we approached Phil King, we approached Tan Parker, we approached Kevin Sparks, and we basically either got crickets or told no because they feel like they don't know the issue well enough to take on the bill. And we're actually finding that from a lot of different offices that we spoke with, where we're finding that, and I understand that especially with freshmen, they have a lot of to get up to speed. There's no question about that. However, it's almost like there's a tepidness in taking on issues that they may be unfamiliar with, because certainly you have folks like me and Rachel Hale, who's come on to help us a lot with a lot of our turf initiatives at the Capitol, who can help educate these members and bring them up to speed. And really, it's not all that complicated. We need the toll to come off the road when it's paid for. It's good tax policy when it comes to that. So I just wanted to let you know that we couldn't even find a Senate sponsor for that bill. So that's one of our, I guess you call it our perennial bill, because it never seems to pass. But with enough grassroots support, I think that we can create the pressure cooker to force that bill to move this time around. The second one is our toll billing reform. Now, any of you who have had to interact with toll roads, which is almost all of our listeners, I'm sure today, our viewers, knows that we have a huge problem with the way that toll bills are handled in the state of Texas. We have fines and fees, thousands of dollars in fines and fees tacked onto bills. You are a criminal in Texas law if you have not paid your toll bill on time. A lot of people only get a bill with maybe 10 days notice before they have to pay, or else those fines and fees start racking up on you. And because it's a criminal offense in Texas for an unpaid toll bill, they can actually block your vehicle registration, impound your car, which is kind of counterproductive to getting your toll bill paid, because now your car's taken from you and you can't get to work to pay the bill. So we have a whole slate of things, of reforms that we've been working on with Senator Hall's office for many, many years. So he's filed that bill again for us this session. That is Senate Bill 316. And then we have a new representative on the line, online, so to speak, Representative Brian Harrison, to file that bill for us in the House. And that's House Bill 2991 from Brian Harrison. And it was funny, as we were talking, he says, "Oh, this is a huge problem in my household. We have lots of issues with our toll bills." And it was funny, I was also speaking to Representative Schatzline in the Tarrant County area as well, who pays significant sums of money in tolls every month just to get around Fort Worth. As anyone who lives up in that direction knows, that this is a huge problem, a huge tax burden put onto our Texas families. So we need to fix this problem. Over 2 million Texas drivers have already been put into collections over unpaid tolls. That's pretty much the city the size of, San Antonio, all put into collections over unpaid tolls. It's a massive problem. We've got to get it fixed, and we hope to get some traction on that this session. But let's get on to some of the newer things that you may not be as familiar with from us, and that has to deal with things like road diets. Okay, so we mentioned that earlier. We have a bill, a House sponsor and a Senate sponsor for that basically prohibits cities from being able to take away auto lanes and dedicate them to something like a bus lane, a bike lane, or even green belts is what we're seeing now. City of Houston has pretty much declared war on cars. Sylvester Turner, the mayor there, came into the Texas Transportation Commission a few years ago when he got elected and said, "We're not building any more highways. We want people to get," he basically said, in so many words, that if we make driving so miserable that people will finally change modes of travel and will get out of their cars and into mass transit or on their bikes or on their feet to get everywhere they need to go, which is completely impractical in a state the size of Texas that's spread out and was never built around mass transit systems. So that bill is filed also by Senator Hall on the Senate side, Senate Bill 1293. And Terri Leo Wilson, another newcomer on the block, has agreed to file this for us. She's from that greater Houston area, and it's House Bill 3281 from her. And so it's important that our metro area reps especially start to join author and or co-author all of these bills. And in our action sheet, we kind of explain that. The more people you can get to sign on to a bill, that's kind of the way we refer to it, is they sign on to the bill. A joint author would be at the top. There's up to 5 of those are allowed on each bill. And then there's unlimited, I think, amounts of people that can co-author a bill. So we call one joint author, another is co-author. Joint authors can basically offer the committee substitutes. They are the ones that actually lay out the bill in committee. And so they're like taking the lead on the bill. And then co-authors basically sign on saying, hey, we agree this bill. We like this bill. We want you to do something to get this bill moving. It's kind of a signal to leadership that there's a lot of a groundswell of support from the members on this bill, and that's what helps get your bill moving. That's what helps get your bill set for a hearing, especially since some of our bill numbers are pretty high. That's going to help us out in getting these bills to move quicker. Then about the kill switch. All right, so some of you have heard about this, and I hope you have heard about it. On the homepage of texasturf.org, which is our website, our primary advocacy website for the session, and on the homepage, we have a billboard on the Epic Times TV station where one of their journalists actually did an expose on the kill switch. We were just like, doing victory dances on that one, because finally we have a national news outlet that's really paying attention to this issue and giving it the attention that's needed to honestly get this fixed in time, because there is a clock ticking on when those have to be put into every single vehicle in the country. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, how's this supposed to work? Why do they need that kill switch in there? Okay, well, we already know from COVID that we know that the government's being weaponized against the average ordinary citizen. And there's no question that they want to do that with drivers as well. Well, this can be applied to any number of things, right? We saw during the pandemic and COVID that they could maybe use it to impose, lockdowns or shelter-in-place orders for any pandemic or any kind of emergency. They could declare a climate emergency and say, oh, I'm sorry, there's too much smog today. We're past the EPA regulation for smog in our area, so now everyone in Houston or San Antonio or whatever, you fill in the blank, won't be able to drive today. So they have a way to keep you from starting your car and going anywhere. It could be like we're seeing much more talk now with Biden in office, that we might want to have a carbon cap of some kind. Carbon emissions are, of course, evil, and we have to do something about this climate emergency of carbon emissions. So if you go over your carbon footprint that's allowed for your household per month, they can use that remote kill switch to keep you from driving anymore. So there's lots of ways that this can be used to be weaponized against ordinary citizens. Of course, Brian Slayton is carrying that for us in the House. He picked up on that pretty early on. That's House Bill 1031. And Senator Middleton did as well. It's Senate Bill 931 on the Senate side. And that's a straight up just protect Texas cars. In other words, it goes after the manufacturer, saying you cannot manufacture a car with this remote kill switch ability in any car you sell in Texas. So with 30 some odd million, I think it's 33 million registered vehicles now in Texas, that will get the attention of the manufacturers. There's no question that they're going to say, whoa, wait a minute. If Texas is saying no to this, it's going to create also, we think, a groundswell to get it repealed on the federal level, which is ultimately what needs to happen, and get a lot of these southern states and others to come alongside Texas and all say, you're not putting these in our cars. And that's going to create the situation where they're going to have to address the issue on the federal level as well. And we also want to do a committee substitute on that to say, hey, you can't even register a car in the state of Texas legally if it's fitted with this type of remote technology. Now, in the federal bill, it's listed under the impaired driving provisions. In other words, drunk driving. And so that's always their foot in the door. We just think that's the camel's nose under the tent method of trying to get their foot in the door to get this technology in every one of our cars. But think about it now. The only way that the government would know that you're an impaired driver is if that technology is always on. That's the only way you're going to know if somebody's swerving or acting like there's impaired or some other problem. You could be swerving out of the way of a deer if you're out where I live, and they could suddenly put a little alarm on, put out some, DPS driver on you and say, this person's an impaired driver, get him off the road. Or they could eventually just cut your car out altogether. Now, I can't imagine them doing that while you're driving, but at the end of the day, the technology's there to keep you from driving your car when they don't want you driving it. So what we did, as we started to see, as you know, you've heard it from the news, California, Washington, these states are now banning owning a fossil fuel powered car. Like, you're not even be able to buy one in those states as of 2030. Some of them, I think it might be 2035. New York is trying to get on board with the same thing. Pete Buttigieg, who's our Secretary of Transportation on the federal level, has said, hey, I like that idea. We might look at doing something like that on the federal level. Thank goodness we have a Republican-led House right now. I don't think that that's going to go anywhere anytime soon. But individual states are doing this, and we have plenty of Rhino Republicans in this state that would get on board with these types of green agenda issues. So we're worried about that. So we have a bill that takes the prevention of a kill switch from going into Texas cars, and we're wrapping it into something we're going to call Right to Drive Act. And so it's got 4 elements in it. One of it's the prevent the kill switch from being put in cars. Another is your right to drive and own a fossil fuel powered car. The other also includes something that's from Representative Schaefer. He has a constitutional amendment for this, the right to basically travel in a car with human decision making, so they can't force us into an autonomous only type of vehicle situation, which of course the technology is not there for it to be safe for us to be running around in cars that are operated solely by computers. And then the fourth thing is something called right to repair. Now, many of you may not know or have heard of that term before. Farmers probably have, because there's been a huge lawsuit with litigation between farmers suing John Deere, for instance, because the computer that they put in the tractors basically had a software lock on it. And you could not, if you were a farmer and your tractor broke down, you could not repair it yourself. You couldn't even hire an independent mechanic in your town to do it for you. You literally had to figure out a way to get your disabled tractor on some kind of trailer somewhere and go potentially hundreds of miles out of your way to get to a John Deere approved dealer in order to unlock that software and actually tell you what's even wrong with it or how much it's going to cost you to fix it. So where we see this happening, we're starting to see lots of articles on the national level. Levi, I can't remember his last name, but he's Levi Russell, Levi Russell is an applied economics professor. He's been warning this alarm bell, saying that you basically are we're under threat right now of not even owning our cars, because here's how they're going to do it. They can put a software lock on there or a software update and make you have to pay for that update in order to continue driving your car. It can be that way on particularly EVs, which we call electric vehicles. We call them EVs for short. So in an EV, like some of you might have seen that Blaze article last year, where a couple bought a used electric vehicle called Ford Focus for their daughter. It was $11,000. It was an only 8-year-old car. Stops working. They take it into the dealership. They tell them, need a new battery. The battery cost is $14,000. So you paid $11,000 for the car. The battery cost to replace it is even more than you paid for the car. But here's the kicker. They said, but we don't support that battery anymore. You literally can't replace your battery. You now have no vehicle. Now they're transferring ownership to us, and we have titles on our vehicles like we own the vehicle. But do you really own your car if these manufacturers can just decide they're not going to support the car parts anymore? They're not going to support the software in your car anymore. And they're not going to support the replacement of a major piece you need to actually operate the car, like the battery. So we're trying to tackle that in this bill that we're calling Right to Drive by having something in there that allows us to have the right to repair. In fact, the farmers just got a win. They settled the lawsuit with John Deere. In fact, Senator Colcourse has a bill that applies to just ag implements and tractors. That's going to be a right to repair bill. But we wanted something that would protect cars and drivers as well, because there's 33 million Texas drivers in the state that we need to protect. So that's in there as well. So that's 4 things in this Right to Drive Act. It's been filed by Representative Middleton once again, and that bill is 2024, Senate Bill 2024, and in the House it's been filed by Nate Schatzline, another newcomer on the scene who's been more than willing to jump in on this, and that's House Bill 4435 on the House side for this Right to Drive Act, if you will. So that's really the layout of where we're going this session to try and be preemptive to protect Texas drivers from a lot of the things we've seen coming down the pike, whether it's in the Biden infrastructure bill or things we see coming, that we want to make sure we're not going to get entrapped by all this stuff, and we need to get it done this session. So what we're asking you to do is to first call your state representative and your state senator and ask them to be a joint author and or co-author, to sign on to these bills, to show their support for it, to put their name on the dotted line, so to speak, to get the momentum we need to get hearings on these bills early on so that we don't get the excuse we're out of time at the end of session, and get these bills moving. And we want a whole cross section, folks. I mean, it's pretty easy to get our Freedom Caucus guys to sign on to these bills. And that's we kind of take that for granted, but that's probably what's going to happen. We're going to probably see our Freedom Caucus members, at least on the House side, sign on to this bill. But we need more than just that. We need people that are moderate Republicans. I'd love to see Democrats on this. I don't even see why transportation should be a partisan issue. But sadly, it is, because the Democrats are so into this environmental radical agenda. We kind of call it the climate cult, so to speak. They're so captured by this that now it's become a partisan issue, where they now have seems to be all in on board with this war on cars and want you out of your car and into transit or walking to get everywhere. And of course, that's all part of their 15-minute cities. You've heard that from the World Economic Forum and some of these other globalists that are trying to get you into high-rise housing, shoved into all of our metro areas so that the government can control where you live, where you work, and basically everything about your quality of life and your lifestyle. And so all of this plays into that. I do want to shout out a couple of other good bills that we've seen filed that I thought were very good. One is by Caroline Harris. By the way, these are all on the Texas Turf website under our Grassroots Action Center tab. So if you go to texasturf.org and you click on the tab on the top that says Grassroots Action Center, there's something right under there, the pull-down menu says Session Resources. And we have listed all of our turf bills, who's authored them, what they're about, and a link to those bills. And then we list all the good and bad bills kind of by category, like tolls and taxes. We have another one on just kind of anti-car or anti-big government type bills. We have some on, eminent domain, those types of bills as well. So we have it all broken down for you on our website. So I'm just going to shout out a couple of these. You can go look up bill numbers and take a look at what I'm talking about. But Caroline Harris filed one that basically says, you're not going to do any ESG as applied to tech stock contracts. So that's a good one that we wanted to highlight for you. There's also one by two bills by Democrats that I thought were very good for us. One is by Bobby Guerra, who's a Democrat who filed House Bill 2170 that has a portion of our toll billing reform bill as a standalone bill. It's the one that says you have to immediately notify drivers when there's a problem with your payment card so that they can't dink you with all these fines and fees to the point where it becomes an unpayable toll bill. So that's really good. We've reached out to his office. We've asked him to sign on to our toll billing reform bill that basically is a much broader reform and includes his language as well as so many other things that we think are good. So we're hoping to hook him up with Brian Harrison to make sure we can get some bipartisan support if possible on this, because we think it affects all Texans, and it should be something that all of our representatives are hearing the grassroots on this and wanting to fix. And another one by James Tallarico that was just came across today. It's House Bill 4231, and it puts a 1-year moratorium on collecting all tolls. They just want the department to pay the tolls for everybody and let everybody use the toll roads for free for a year. I thought that was an interesting approach. I don't anticipate it going anywhere, but for our viewers, I think it is important for us to note that TxDOT is awash in cash. We've seen this with our state, where we have a $32 billion surplus at the state level. Well, that also applies to TxDOT. They have $15 billion more than they needed from their last budget cycle. So this is huge. And so one of the things that we've been asking for that doesn't take a bill to do it, but as you're talking to your state representative and your state senators, I think it's important for us to get some traction on this. And that is that we think that one of the best uses of that surplus revenue that they could use right now today would be to pay off the toll bonds on State Highway 130, which basically is supposed to be like a connector road from basically Seguin, which is right outside San Antonio, to bypass the traffic on I-35 in Austin and get you all the way over to basically Round Rock, Georgetown area. So that you can bypass all of that congestion that happens on I-35 through the Austin area. Anyone who has to take I-35 to get from anywhere in the state into the capital knows how bad I-35 is. It is literally a parking lot. I mean, the gridlock there's like not even words, adjectives left in the human vocabulary to describe just how bad that area of the state is, and that affects our supply chain, folks, because 75% of Texans, 2/3 of Texans, live within a 35-mile range of I-35. So this affects all your trucks' ability to get your goods to and from where they need to go, not to mention people where they need to go. And we think that they could pay off the bonds for State Highway 130 so that we would actually get those tractor trailers off of I-35, at least the ones that have to bypass the Austin area and are just traveling through the state, so that they would take it, because right now they have to pay per axle. It's a very expensive toll road. It's I think $56. Now, this was a number of years ago. It was like $56 one way to take that toll road from Seguin all the way over to Georgetown. So when it's 35 miles out of their way, plus having to pay the toll, they don't have the money. So in order to actually use the infrastructure we have built already in this state, and that would give us immediate relief on I-35, is to get that the State Highway 130 paid off so it can become a freeway, if you will. Move those trucks and anyone else that needs to bypass that Austin area off of I-35, and boom, you've already got a huge congestion relief project without having to build a single piece of pavement, or pave anything new, because we already have the infrastructure. It's being underutilized because it's a toll road. So that's just a little sidebar for you. But I wanted to go over, because this is something that Joanne and I have been talking about and worried about as the session unfolds, is that we have some other bills that are being filed. I think we're going to do this in a two-part. I want you first to help us get momentum behind our good bills, the proactive, preemptive bills that need to be passed. And so I'd like you to do that and focus on that this go round. But next time we visit, I want to go over some of the horrific bills that we have been seeing filed on the, and it's not even the other side of the aisle. There was one filed by Senator Donna Campbell, along with Democrat in the House, Terri Canales, who's one of the Democrat committee chairs. This is why we were so vocal against Democrat committee chairs, because they file bills that are bad news for the Texas taxpayer. One of them would extend the contract of the public-private partnership on State Highway 130 for an additional 20 years. Remember, the original contract for this was a 50-year deal. They want it to be 70 years. So that would take it from 2045, when the tolls would come off, to 2065. Now, let me remind you that this project was originally owned and operated by Cintra, which was a Spanish firm, and Zachary was the minority partner. They're out of San Antonio, which is a Texas company. But they controlled that road and did the original contract with TxDOT on that project. It went bankrupt in less than 3 years. And guess what? All their debt was wiped out in bankruptcy court. They only had to do the new operator. It took over as Strategic Value Partners. It's a conglomerate of American and foreign companies that took over that project. And they literally have hired the former Transportation Commissioner, Chairwoman Deirdre DeLisi, as their lobbyist last session. I'm not sure if she's pushing it this session as well, but they're basically hiring Texas lobby firms to lobby to just keep gouging Texas drivers on that highway for the next 20 years beyond when the contract is. And they only had to make some pavement repairs to that when they took it over. So at most they have maybe $250 million, the last I could see on documentation available to us. And that's all they owed on the road. Well, I'm sure by now that's already been paid off with just the existing toll revenues. So they're basically asking for 20 years of just cha-ching, making all of us Texas drivers their ATM machine to drive on that road. And so we're not going to get State Highway 130 and their bonds paid off and make that a freeway if we extend the contract to this private operator for another 20 years beyond 2045. I mean, we're going to be stuck in this kind of north-south gridlock throughout the state in a big way if that bill passes. The bill numbers for that one, Donna Campbell filed it on the Senate side, and that's 1071, Senate Bill 1071. And Terri Canales, the Democrat committee chair, filed that on the House side again. He filed it last session. We killed it, thank God. It was House Bill 2795 is the House bill number for that. Folks, we need to be calling Senator Campbell's office and telling her how upset we are that she filed this bill. This is an absolute special interest, crony capitalist, corporate welfare bill filed by one of our own. This is an absolute outrage, and nobody should be in support of this bill. And we hope that, if anything, we want her to pull it down and certainly not have a hearing request on this bill, because it's bad legislation and it's going to counteract and basically undermine everything that we, the grassroots, have been trying to get now for multiple sessions, which is get State Highway 130 paid off so that we can make it a freeway and actually relieve congestion on I-35. In fact, the former Democrat committee chair, Joe Pickett from El Paso, had a bill to do that, and so did Paul Workman, a Republican who used to represent part of that Austin area, wanted to get the tolls off of 130 to actually get congestion relief in that area. So it's certainly not a new concept. They know that we're coming after that, and here they go and pass or trying to get a bill that would extend that even beyond our current situation. Here's another one, folks. You've all heard about this. I hope you've heard about it. That in that federal infrastructure bill, there was a pilot program. This is the Biden bill now, where we had, 26 Republicans vote with them on this. What they've unleashed on us is a pilot program for a national mileage tax. That is a tax, basically a toll, for every mile you drive. We were so worried about this that we got it in the Republican platform last year, and it's plank number 63 in the Republican platform against any form of a mileage tax. Well, guess what there is? There is a bill filed by our Democrat committee chair in the House, Terri Canales. House Bill 3418 is actually been filed. It's basically creates a pilot program on the state level to do the same thing. Now they're claiming the pilot program only captures commercial vehicles, meaning trucks, because there are so many trucks that are starting to use alternative fuels, whether it's natural gas or electric or other type. Some are doing hydrogen, apparently, powered car trucks, and so they want to be able to have a way to charge those trucks for their road use because the gasoline tax won't apply to them. Folks, there's other ways to do this. In fact, there's already been a slew of bills filed to try and have a registration fee for electric vehicles imposed on them because they are basically using our roads for free. They don't pay a gasoline tax. And so we do think there's other alternatives to this. They're already addressing it on the state level with legislation. We do not need to open the Pandora's box to a mileage tax or a mileage fee, if you will, here in Texas. And if you actually read the words of this carefully, and I'm going to go to that right now so that we can read it to you. It actually says, as part of the pilot, that it wants to examine varied pricing based on the time of day you're driving, the type of public highway, the proximity to transit, vehicle fuel efficiency, your participation in car sharing or carpooling, and the income of the operator of the car. So that's literally what we're seeing now in this bill. It's not just about commercial trucks, folks. They're going to come after every one of us, and they want to know your income, and they want to know what time of day you're driving, and they want to know if you're close enough to a carpool, and shame on you if you're not using it, or if you're close enough to mass transit, shame on you for not being in mass transit. How dare you use your single occupancy car to get to and from work? Heaven forbid that might be the most convenient and efficient way for you to get around, and that we are supposed to live in a free market economy where you can make consumer choices and decide how and when and where you want to get to work. So that's another bill that's on the horizon that we have to absolutely kill that bill. And of course, he's the chair of the committee. It's going to get a hearing. And so we're going to need a massive public pressure campaign to kill that bill. It's the state mileage tax, if you will, and it's House Bill 3418 by the Democrat committee chair, Terri Canales. I have not seen a Senate sponsor on that yet, but today's the bill filing deadline. We're recording this on Friday, even though you're viewing it on Monday. And so we will keep you posted on that. So I think we're going to wrap up this session with you right now, right there. We have our Take Action worksheet that is going to be pushed out with all the information you need on what we discussed with all the bill numbers and who to call. And remember, folks, when you're calling up and you're looking up who represents you, if you don't already know who your state senator and state representative are, there's a section on the Texas Legislature online website that allows you to click on a link that says who represents me. But in that list, they list your U.S. senators and your U.S. member of Congress, which is also called a representative. So we want to make sure that when you're making those phone calls, you're actually calling the right person. And the person you want to call is your Texas House member, your Texas representative in the Texas legislature, not your U.S. member of Congress. So I wanted to make sure we made that distinction for you. And we also have that link right on the Grassroots Action Center page of the texasturf.org website that'll take you straight to that link as well. So we're going to to have all of that information up for you to view and examine. But the main thing is to get support behind our grassroots bills that are going to preempt the radical environmentalist woke agenda as it applies to roads. So thank you. I can't tell you how much we appreciate all of the support that you give us through the years, as well as this session. And it's time to put pedal to the metal, folks. We've got to get support behind these bills so we can get hearings on these bills early enough to get them passed and become law. So with that, thanks. I'm signing off.